Although the fighting stopped in 1918, the war wasn't officially over until several treaties had been signed over the next 2 years. Most of these were carried out in France, and each treaty bore the name of a Paris suburb. Germany, although not the first country to declare war in the chain of events which started World War I, was treated very severely, and the country was left impoverished to the point that it was almost impossible to recover. In the Treaty of Versailles, reparation was ordered to be paid by Germany, the equivalent of £284 billion in today's money. Territory was also lost. Disgruntlement and hardship over the next few years festered and provided the seeds for World War II. Kaiser Wilhelm moved to the Netherlands, where other German royalty and nobles joined him in exile. This ended the German monarchy. The Russians were involved in their own political holocaust, which resulted in the shocking assassination of the entire royal family at Ekaterinburg, where the Tsar, his wife, 4 teenage daughters and their young brother were shot in a cellar. Our own monarchy remained intact, but significant changes had occurred socially. The rigid system of class began to break down. Women, many of whom had been in service before the war, started to feel their newfound independence and earning power as they took jobs vacated by a reduced male population. The fight for the franchise resumed, and the suffragette movement resulted in winning not only their right to vote, but equality too. In Britain, recovery from an expensive war was difficult. Whole towns had been stripped of its male workforce as a result of putting citizens from the same locality into the same regiment, such as the Accrington Pals. Food shortage, much of it caused by the sinking of merchant shipping by U-boats, resulted in widespread starvation through the war and afterwards, especially in urban areas. The euphoria at the armistice soon dissolved when people realised the cost in lives and living conditions caused by this needless war. The struggle to recover throughout Europe and many countries beyond would take years, and just as nations were settling into different degrees of stability, the nightmare was to start again, just 20 years later with the outbreak of World War II in 1939.
Keep the home fires burning. Well, that's what I've been trying to do over the last 3.5 years, but it's not been easy. So many shortages, being on army pay and trying to bring up young Harry without a dad. When Joe first went to the front, he used to write long, loving letters, but they gradually became short, scrappy notes, and I hadn't heard anything for about 3 weeks until Monday, when he wrote to say he would be home on Friday afternoon. When the war ended, I didn't know if he was alive or dead, and I wasn't the only one. We were all so glad that there would be no more killing, but so many of us didn't know what happened to the men we loved. Now Joe was really coming home. I was so excited, spent the whole week making plans, cleaning the house and trying to make it into a good homecoming for him. When I told our Edna, she said I should let Harry spend a couple of days with her. Give Joe and me some time together. Harry loves going to see her. I know she spoils him rotten, and it seemed like a good idea, so I packed him off. Soon it was Friday tea time, with the clock ticking away and I was waiting. Kept going to the window and peering up the road, but there was no sign of him. It was nearly tea time when I spotted him coming down the road, but it didn't look like my Joe. He looked thin and weary, walked with stooped shoulders, eyes fixed to the ground. I rushed to the door to welcome him, but it was like clinging to a shadow. He gave me a slight hug, a tired smile, and slipped into the passage. I was wondering how we were going to spend the evening. Then he told me he had arranged to meet some of his mates down at the pub. Most of them were newly returned from the front, and I hoped a drink or two with them might help. I was so excited, spent the whole week making plans, cleaning the house and trying to make it into a good homecoming for him. When Joe first went to the front, he used to write long, loving letters, but they gradually became short, scrappy notes. And I hoped a drink or two with them might help. It was only about 10 when he came home, and the first thing he said was that he would sleep on the couch. I instantly felt rejected, but tried not to show it, and I told him there was no need to, because I would sleep in Harry's bed. So I rushed upstairs to remove my nightdress from the bed, where I had been hoping for some sort of second honeymoon to break the barrier between us. I was woken by shouts and swearing. I jumped out of bed and rushed in to see what was the matter, but Joe was lying very still and silent, and I knew he was only pretending to be asleep, and he wouldn't welcome my interference, so I crept back into bed, not knowing what to expect next. He went off to meet his mates again at night, and we slept in separate beds. I did hear him crying out again, but decided he would prefer it if I stayed where I was and didn't ask what was wrong. And then it was Sunday, just before 12, and the back door burst open and Harry rushed in, and he stopped, short, and stared at Joe. "Who are you?" he demanded in an angry voice. Joe smiled and said, "I'm your dad." To which Harry replied, "No, you're not. He's away at war." But he didn't sound too sure and looked at me for confirmation. I nodded my head and tried to smile. Harry was still not so sure, so he said, "He's not like your photo, ma'am," to which Joe smiled. I stole a sideways glance at Joe, who was smiling with real amusement, and I wondered why I had been so worried about them getting on together. He put his arms round me and said, "I'm sorry, it looks as if you have to suffer my nightmares, but I'll try not to wake you." On his way out, I told him it didn't matter, just as long as we were together. He bent down and kissed me as tenderly as he used to, and suddenly, I knew we were going to be able to work it all out.
Let's not forget the part played by animals in the Great War, recognising that they had no decision in their use or fate. Many people have seen the film and stage show of War Horse, showing an animal which makes a rather incredulous survival. It might surprise people to learn that besides the 10 million soldiers killed in the war, over 8 million horses also died. 7,000 of these on the first day of the Battle of Verdun. They were very susceptible to the elements. There were no vaccination in those days, and thousands of horses died from exhaustion, disease and poison gas. Many were treated and saved by the Army Veterinary Service, but these were returned to duty to become victims again. The work of the animals was varied. Horses and mules were used to move supplies and weapons. Oxen were also used to pull heavy loads. Elephants were used by the Germans to move timber. Dogs were used as sentries, scouts, ammunition and equipment carriers, as well as to send messages. The Red Cross used dogs to carry medical equipment. Carrier pigeons were used extensively to carry messages. Cats were brought in to try and control the rat population. There were organisations which attempted to attend to animal welfare during the war, such as Our Dumb Animals League, which founded the Blue Cross to help these beleaguered animals. However, during the severe periods of the war, when it was difficult even to help the human casualties, animals came a distant second for care. After the war, many animals that had survived were tragically left behind to an uncertain fate.